After years of struggling with overeating, even as a personal trainer with multiple nutrition certifications, I knew something had to be missing. I relied so heavily on willpower to keep my eating in check, and when I wasn't able to stick to my plan, the guilt and the shame would just come rushing in, and then I'd end up starting over tomorrow. And if you're anything like me, you're probably wondering if there's any way you'll ever actually stick to what you say you're going to do for more than a few days before you're in the pantry uncontrollably eating chocolates again. Or if that feeling after leaving the restaurant when you overate yet again and feel like you ruined your progress will have a permanent place in your life. The good news is there is a way through this, and you don't have to go back to tracking every bite with MyFitnessPal, and you also don't have to go listen to David Goggins yelling at you to get your discipline in check if you still want to lose fat, but you know that what you're currently doing isn't working. When I finally decided that maybe I'm not actually the problem and I was just missing a few pieces to the puzzle, that is how to lose fat without being absolutely miserable, change started happening. And the catch is that you have to be open to a new way of looking at the fat loss process and be okay with the most important part of making this new way of losing fat work for you, which is the data gathering phase. And in order to start tackling my overeating and guilt spirals, I had to take a step back and look at my behaviors from a new lens. There's a common scenario that I used to deal with quite a lot. I'd finish dinner and then the cravings would hit. I have a big sweet tooth, so it was always really hard for me to resist the temptation of the chocolates in the pantry after dinner. I'd have one and then another and then another, and while my inner mental chatter was getting louder and louder, saying, you really shouldn't be doing this, you can only have one more bite, you'll regret this and ruin your progress if you don't stop now. But it only felt as if the louder that voice got, the more I would want to continue eating and not put the chocolates down. So why was it that despite my rational thought process saying over and over that I shouldn't be doing this and that I know it won't get me to my future fitness goals, that I kept going? And it wasn't until I put aside the self-judgment for not being more disciplined that I was able to find the answers to this question that had been sabotaging my progress for years. And what I found was a whole world of biological and psychological principles that changed the way I view behavior change in fitness forever. So I want to show you a couple big principles that are non-negotiable for understanding why cravings and overeating happen and how mindful eating can be a vehicle for overcoming internal resistance that leads to lasting fat loss. The first thing I had to understand was that I could not habit stack my way out of this. Habits are important, but not in the way that you might think. The essence of a habit is an action that is performed reflexively without the need to think or exert self-control. And habits, in order to form, have to occur within a stable context and consist of three things: the cue, the trigger or cause of the habit, the behavior, which is the actual action, and the reward, which is some type of positive experience associated with the behavior. And the keys we need to focus on here are stable context and positive reward. The changes that we're trying to make here, whether it's stopping overeating or getting to the gym more, eating healthier in general, life does not provide us with the stable context that would be needed in order to make these into habits. Stable context meaning that the events leading up to the behavior always happen in the same predictable way. But there are so many variables going on in life: work, kids, the dog, stress, overwhelm, and whatever situations your life may bring about. We cannot rely on habits to make the kind of changes long-term results actually require. And many of us, especially if you're watching this video, have internal conflicts about fitness and nutrition that are absolutely annihilating any hint of positive reward from these behaviors because you've been guilting and shaming yourself into eating better and exercising for so long. And that was me too. And it sounds like this: I should get healthy because I want to lose weight, and if I don't, I'll never be able to like myself. I really should go to the gym today because I need to be consistent if I ever want to lose fat. And if I don't want to feel like a failure, I should order the fish at the restaurant because if I order what I actually want, I'll lose control and ruin my progress for the whole week. Now that I've messed up and eaten 2 slices of pizza, I'll go ahead and have 4 because I'm not allowed to have it tomorrow. Now it's the next morning and I feel disgusting and guilty for overeating yesterday. And why did I do that? I can't believe I messed up again when I really thought I had it all together this time. It really is endless, the amount of time spent mentally berating ourselves for our shortcomings when it comes to lifestyle change. But this internal dialogue is part of the problem, fuel on the fire that perpetuates overeating. And studies have shown that guilt and negative self-talk actually increase the likelihood that the very behaviors we're trying to avoid will happen again. We overeat, we feel bad about it. Those negative feelings make us crave more calorie-dense foods because our brain has learned that those foods soothe us. It knows the ice cream makes us feel better unless we've taught it otherwise, which is possible, but it requires that you actually understand how our brain makes decisions by ranking our behaviors in a reward hierarchy within our brains. But before we go there, I want to make it clear that I know it's not as easy as just stop beating yourself up. We beat ourselves up after our so-called failures because our brain wants to do something now that the damage has been done. But we can't take back what happened, so what else is there to do than to feel bad about it and try to discipline ourselves into being better? Just knowing that guilt isn't the answer isn't enough to stop it from happening. We have to give the brain something else to do after we fall short, something actually productive that will help us move forward and end the guilt spiral. So what I'm about to show you was the turning point for me, and it's not a magical fix, but it is the key to understanding how I could retrain my brain to not even want to overeat in the first place. It's about to get a bit sciencey, but please stick with me here because this is essential to understand if you ever want to make these changes. And I want to preface this by thanking Dr. Judson Brewer for his extensive research that's led to more widespread understanding of these concepts. So there's a part of your brain called the orbitofrontal cortex, the OFC for short, and it's the decider of your brain. It's constantly comparing everything we do in terms of whether it will help or hinder our survival. And it puts all of our behaviors in a reward hierarchy. The more rewarding the behavior, the higher it gets ranked. And every time we experience the rewards, or lack thereof, of our behaviors, the OFC looks at what we did and how it felt in that particular context and compares the results to what we expected. What we expected is all the previous data our brain has logged to get the previous ranking. And this is all related to the Rescorla-Wagner model of behavior change, which is widely accepted within science, that the only way to change a behavior is to change where it stands in the reward hierarchy. See how willpower has nothing to do with this. This is what is going to give you your power back, and it's what finally enabled me to stop feeling like I was so out of control and actually gain trust with myself back. Knowing that this mechanism exists within your brain allows you to drop the guilt and use every experience you have, positive or negative, to your advantage with food. So let me give you an example from my real life. There was one night I came home from having pizza out. I was full, but the smell of the leftovers were taunting me the entire ride home. And I knew I didn't need any more pizza, but my mind just would not let me think about anything else. And the internal debate was happening, you might be familiar with. Oh, you shouldn't have more pizza. You've already had too much. You can't have any more. You're gonna gain weight. But notice the language here. Can't, shouldn't. These are all indicative of the internal conflict that we deal with when it comes to lifestyle changes. And one part of me wants more pizza. The other knows that it's not going to help me with my long-term goals. And if you've watched my other videos, you know that this is the survival brain and the rational brain at odds with each other. But basically, we have to work on this internal resistance by paying attention to the difference between what we expect the reward to be of our actions and what the reward actually is. And this is how we change where the behavior sits in the reward hierarchy within our brain. If I'm telling myself I can't and I'm not allowed, how much is that going to inflate the reward value? For example, remember when your parents told you you're not allowed to have dessert and it made you want it even more? And when one part of you wants it, the other part of you is restricting it, it backfires in a similar way. This is not to say that we should give in to every impulse, but use these situations to our advantage. And here's how you do that. You're gonna ask yourself, how is this going to feel in my body if I decide to have the extra pizza? This is what I was asking myself. And then basically feel how bloated and heavy your stomach will feel if more food were to enter at this moment. In my case, it was after I'd already had so much. And ask again, would I like more pizza? And if the answer is yes, step 2 is to enter experiment mode. This is where we're gathering data. We now are going to take a bite of the pizza, and it's time for more questions. How is this pizza tasting on the first bite? Is it as good as I imagined it was going to be? Does it match up to my expectations? And let's take another bite. What's this one like? How is my stomach feeling? And by the third bite, I had realized that the pizza wasn't even tasting as good as my craving had tricked me into believing it would be, and I was able to put the rest away. And this is just one data point, but every experience is building the data bank in your brain that will eventually change the reward value, in this case of overeating, and address your craving and overeating patterns at the source, which is your brain. And these concepts took me a while to fully understand and integrate, but it was the only solution to my overeating that allowed me to finally start getting consistent and therefore seeing real results. So let me know in the comments if you'd like a deep dive on this, because it truly was life-changing for me. I know it's a little bit complicated at first, but it's worth it to take the time to understand this. Remember, you've got this. I'll see you in the next one.